Swami.
Thank you, Mataji. And I also will begin with a chant. This, by the way, is from the Mahanarayana Upanishad, from an older part of the Veda, but easily found in the Mahanarayana Upanishad. Om Ardram Jwalati Jyotirahhamasmi Jyotir Jwalati Brahmahamasmi Yohamasmi Brahmahamasmi Ahamasmi Brahmahamasmi Ahamevaham Mam Juhomi Swaha. Melting into the light, I am the light that shines. The light shines, the light which is Brahman. That which I am is nothing but Brahman. I am, and I am Brahman. I myself offer myself into the infinite light, which is myself. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. So my greetings to my dear friend Swami Sarvapriyananda and to Mataji Brahmaprana. I am so glad to be here with all of you and to be working with Mataji and with Swami Sarvapriyananda, both of whom, as I said, are dear friends. As Swami Sarvapriyananda just flew in from India to New York, I just flew in from France to Dallas. And so both of us are jet lagged. The Swami said, please don't pay any attention to what I say because I'm jet lagged. I have to say I was wrapped in attentiveness to what he had to say. But I can say that don't pay attention to what I'm saying because of the jet lag also. So let me also say that this is unusual for me, that I've been asked to speak on Jnana Yoga, not because, or Advaita or Jnana Yoga, not because I don't like to speak on it. It's my great love. It's what I like to speak on most. But for a number of years, whenever I am in a seminar with other people who are also presenting, I'm always told that, well, so-and-so wants to speak on this and so-and-so wants to speak on that, but you can speak on anything, so why don't you speak on the leftover? So I always get the leftover topic, which I have to say has been very good for me. It's been, I don't say that with any regret and with any dissatisfaction. It's been extremely good for me because it has helped me to learn to speak on other topics and has deepened my spiritual life, really. To speak, I think, delve into all of the 4 yogas and associated topics. But again, it's a delight to be able to speak on Advaita. A strange thing I've found in France, where I work now, as most of you know, where I have to use French. So I give conferences now. I've been there for 2 years. So, and by now I give, for some time, I've given all of the conferences and talks in French. Yes, broken French, but understandable French. And something I found is that when I speak about Advaita, I can speak fluently. I don't have to search for words. It just comes. When I speak on other topics, I have trouble finding the right vocabulary. So I'm delighted to be able to speak on my favorite topic. And also, it's a great joy to be able to speak in English because I don't have to think so hard. For French, I love French. I love France. I love French culture. I love the French people. And I love the French language. But I still have to struggle with it because I'm only there for 2 years. And French is a very, very difficult language, much harder than Spanish. So it's a delight to be here to speak on my favorite topic in my natural language. And also, let me say that Swami Sarvapriyananda, of course, is known for his talks on Advaita, on the path of knowledge. which he speaks on with such great authority, wisdom, and clarity. So it was a joy to listen to him this morning speak so beautifully on bhakti. So now let me enter the topic. It is what Advaita is and what it is not. Now, with the resources that we have nowadays, not just the books, which we've had for a long time, but YouTube and the videos in particular of people like Swami Sarvapriyananda, Divyananda Prana, and some other teachers of Advaita, the misunderstandings of Advaita and the path of jnana are not as great as they once were. But I still want to start this first session with a discussion of what Advaita is and what jnana yoga is, because the two are not exactly the same. If you have a Venn diagram of Advaita and jnana yoga, they intersect very much, but not completely. The two are not exactly the same. So I want to start with that to clarify some concepts. And the rest of the sessions for my part will be more practical, how to do it, how to practice, how to live Advaita. But we'll start with this. So first of all, jnana yoga, the path of knowledge. In the path of knowledge, the first question is, what does knowledge mean here? We often think, and sometimes Swami Vivekananda says, that jnana yoga is the path of philosophy. Yes, it is the path of philosophy, but in a very special sense. The path of jnana yoga doesn't use just ideas and concepts. The ideas and concepts are used to clarify our thinking. Why? Because the world that we see is the world of our thinking. We see the world that we see because that is the world that we understand, that fits our concepts. That is, perception, as even neurophysiologists have discovered. They won't go as far as I go, or a Vedantist goes, but even neurophysiologists have found that perception is largely interpretation. It's not perception like a camera. A camera just registers what is visually there. Our perception is not the perception of a camera. We are constantly interpreting, and we're seeing what we interpret. We're seeing the interpretation, not the thing itself. Vedanta goes so far as to say that if we saw what is really there to be seen, it would be Brahman, nothing but Brahman. Everything else has been painted over Brahman by the mind. Brahman is the reality, and the mind paints this picture of the world. I won't go into the question of why we all paint it similarly. We don't paint it the same, but we paint it similarly. That's a good question, but that would take us too far off the present topic. But we see the world that we think. Seeing is, at least in part, and some Vedantists would say completely, but all Vedantists would say in part, seeing is creating. We perceive that which we paint with the mind, which we have painted with the mind. So jnana yoga, the path of knowledge, is not the path of collecting information. One problem again is that for us in the modern world, knowledge means information. We don't distinguish between information and what in Vedanta is called knowledge. A very mystifying fact is one that mystified me for a long time, that Swami Vivekananda used to define or translate Satchidananda as existence, knowledge, bliss. Nowadays, and sometimes Swamiji also would translate it as existence, consciousness, bliss. But the use of existence, knowledge, bliss is very confusing. And in defense of the Swami, when he came, the vocabulary of Vedanta was new in English. So he had to come up with terms to translate the Vedantic concepts. But why did he use the term knowledge? Because again, for us in the modern world, knowledge means things that I know. He's a person of great knowledge. That means he knows many things. So Vedanta is not the path of knowledge, or Jnana Yoga is not the path of knowledge in that sense. Jnana does not mean information. It doesn't mean things that you know. It means the act of knowledge, the act of knowledge. And even that is not a perfect explanation, because the act of knowledge, there's not really an act. But from our standpoint, there seems to be an act of knowledge. And so to use human language, we have to compromise with the truth. And so the act of knowledge. When I used to be amazed as a student in junior high school and high school, when I began to take an interest in studies. Elementary school, I hated, and I never paid attention to anything, and my grades showed it. But in junior high and high school, I became a very good student, and I was fascinated with knowledge, and particularly with pure mathematics. And so when the teacher would give us a problem to work out, and it being a problem, it was meant to be something new, something we hadn't confronted before, but something which we had the tools to work out if we could figure out how. And so we get the problem on the blackboard. I'd look at it and I'd think, how am I going to figure this out? What is it? What is it with this problem? What is the solution? Suddenly, a solution would flash in the mind, and I would work it out and say, yes, this is it. I would raise my hand to answer the question, and then I would see one or two other hands in the room being raised to answer the question too. And I was always mystified. How did they come up with the solution? Because I don't even know how I came up with it. Just suddenly I saw it. I suddenly saw it, and it came out. That's knowledge. The knowing itself is knowledge. So existence, knowledge, bliss doesn't mean existence, information, or things to know bliss. It means existence, knowing bliss. But again, there's the compromise with language, because knowing implies a process. When I understood the mathematical problem, the mysterious thing was, it was not a process. It wasn't, okay, it said, the problem says this, and I could look at it like this, and I could do that, and I could do that, and I could do that. No, just suddenly there was a flash of understanding. That's knowing, that's knowledge, not a process. And so the path of Jnana Yoga is the path in which we seek to know, that in that sense, to know the reality itself. And that's not the same as Advaita. Usually the path of knowledge in Vedanta is used for the realization of Advaita. So again, in a Venn diagram, the two are almost coterminous, but not quite. Because Sankhya, the path of Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya as a yoga, Sankhya yoga is also Jnana Yoga, but there they are not seeking Advaita, because Sankhya does not believe in Advaita. Sankhya believes that there is Prakriti, which is real, the self, which is real, and many other selves, which are real. And so I just have to realize my individual Purusha, which is individually infinite, which Vedanta says is a contradiction in terms, but we'll accept what Sankhya says for the moment, my individual infinity. So that's not Advaita, but it is knowledge. It is the realization through the path of Jnana Yoga. So Jnana Yoga indicates the yoga in which you are trying to know in this highest sense. Philosophy is only to get the concepts clear so that your thinking becomes clear, so that eventually the flash of knowing comes, not the thing known. When you study it philosophically, you're knowing in the ordinary sense the philosophy, the concepts, getting them straight. But what you want is for the concepts to turn into the reality. And that's what happens in real knowledge. So the separation between knowledge as experience and knowledge as things to be known. So Jnana Yoga means knowing in that sense, and it doesn't necessarily mean Advaita, because it's used in Sankhya, and it's the process used also in Buddhism. So now Advaita. What is Advaita? Advaita, of course, means Advaita. There is one reality, but as Sri Ramakrishna explains, and traditional Advaita explains, but Sri Ramakrishna explains it in a very beautiful, simple way. If you have only one, then you don't even have one, because the idea of one brings in the idea of enumeration. One is already enumerating. There's only one reality. You've enumerated it as one, which implies 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 million, 10 billion. So if you have one, you have the other numbers. That's why all of the numbers come out of one. So Sri Ramakrishna said, if there's only one, it's no longer one. Therefore, we say Advaita, no two, no multiplicity, no enumeration at all, but no two, no second. So that's what Advaita means. It's the true infinity. In mathematics, we have the idea of infinities, the infinite set of integers, the infinite set of real numbers, the infinite set of fractions, the infinite set of points within a line in geometry. And there are many other infinite sets in mathematics. But none of them are really infinite. There, infinite only means endless within the set. Endless, you can't stop finding another one to add to the set. That's what infinite means, but that is not infinite. Infinite means there are no limitations, no boundaries. But the infinites of mathematics, all of them, have the boundary of the set that they apply to. But the real infinite is that which has no bounds whatsoever. And so there cannot be two infinites. That's the Vedantic response to Sankhya. Again, Sankhya is a great philosophy, and it's a great beginning to the understanding of Advaita. That's why we use Drigdrishya Viveka, the discrimination between the seer and the seen. That's really a practice in Sankhya, but it's a great help, a great tool in the practice of Advaita. And that's why we have Advaitic books like Drigdrishya Viveka, the discrimination between the seer and the seen. But that in itself doesn't lead to Advaita. It leads to Dvaita, the distinction between me and everything that I perceive. That's extremely useful for discovering what consciousness is itself, because right now consciousness is completely mixed up, inextricably mixed up in our understanding with all of our experience. So that gives us a chance to separate consciousness out and see what consciousness is in itself, begin to understand consciousness in itself. But it doesn't lead to Advaita. It leads to the end of Sankhya, where you realize that you are infinite consciousness, but there is still nature and there's still other infinite consciousnesses. So Advaita means no, that there are no limitations whatsoever. There is no second. There's not a second of nature, consciousness and nature, no. There is no second between me and you, between me and the worm, between me and the devil, as Swami Vivekananda was fond of saying. He would often call in the devil in his American lectures, only because he knew the shock value of using the word devil. And so he would say that everyone is the self. Everyone is perfect God. The cat, rat, devil, all are perfect God. He knew the shock value of saying, adding the devil into the mix. And so everything is the non-dual reality. There are no limitations whatsoever. And that's why that is perfect freedom. That's a tangent, but I love to go off on tangents. So let me go off on this tangent for a minute. We have a misunderstanding of the term freedom, as we have misunderstandings of so many things. In fact, one could say from a high Vedantic standpoint, we have a misunderstanding of everything, but we have a deep misunderstanding of freedom. We think freedom means the freedom to do what I want to do, the freedom to choose what I want to choose. No, freedom of choice is important in life, but it's not freedom. Freedom to do is important in life, but it's not real freedom. So Swamiji said we need physical freedom, emotional freedom, intellectual freedom, and spiritual freedom. But spiritual freedom is real freedom. Spiritual freedom means that there's nothing whatsoever that limits me, nothing whatsoever that impinges upon me. There's nothing whatsoever that I have to do. Doing itself is a great bondage. Choosing is a great bondage. That's why after you go shopping, you may be happy that you've bought a lot of things that you wanted, but you're also exhausted. You come home from shopping and you lie down on the couch to rest from the experience because it's work. So Advaita is also means infinite existence, but it means infinite freedom as well, because there's nothing to impinge on you, nothing that forces you to do anything, not even to think, not even to perceive, nothing that there's nothing to do. In our present experience, that sounds awfully boring because we think that, oh, there's so many things I want to do, so many experiences I want to have. Eventually, we come to see that, no, this doesn't mean a boring state. It means I am reality itself. I am the truth itself. I am infinity itself. I am awareness itself. There's nothing outside of me. All of reality, all value, all joy, all beauty is me, what I am and what everything is. There's no longer a distinction between me and other, me and the world. Everything is that. So Advaita means the non-dual reality, and it also means the non-dual experience, and it also means the path leading to that, the path which has that as its conscious goal. I'm an Advaitin. That means I'm a person who either has realized that, unlikely, or I am a person who wants to attain to Advaita, and I've immersed myself in the philosophy of Advaita, and my practice is aimed towards that experience of non-dual reality. So Jnana Yoga is the path in which we seek to know through that, that highest faculty of mind, which is the buddhi. You know the word buddhi. It's often translated as intellect, and that's a terrible translation because intellect, as we know it in modern English and other modern languages, means the higher thinking faculty, that which questions, that which doubts, that which tries to figure things out. It's an important faculty, but it's not the buddhi. The buddhi is that which knows with clarity. Even in ordinary things, when I see something that I recognize, oh, that is my pen. The fact of recognition takes place in the buddhi. I know. That is what the buddhi says. I know. And the mind adds other things, but the buddhi is that which says, I know. So the buddhi, which also is the hridaya in Vedanta, that is the heart, the di, the buddhi, the heart, hridayam, all of those things are synonymous in Vedanta, and they all mean that highest faculty of mind, which knows with clarity and without thinking. The thinking mind may present the results of its thinking to the buddhi, but the buddhi is that which says, ah, I know. The buddhi is in cartoons, Western cartoons, or now, of course, they have cartoons in India as well. The buddhi is the bubble in a cartoon which has the light bulb in it. When to show that the character in the cartoon has understood, there's a bubble with a light bulb in it. That is the buddhi. That aha, the eureka. I know. That is the buddhi. So Jnana Yoga is the path which uses the buddhi to know the truth. Whether you are following the path of Sankhya, or the path of Vedanta, or the path of Buddhism, because Buddhism is, if I have time later, I will explain, when Buddhism says that it is Mahayana Buddhism says it is the path of Advaita, the non-dual path. What they mean by non-dualism is different from what we mean by non-dualism, because Buddhism doesn't believe in one reality. So it doesn't mean identity with reality itself, because there's no such thing as unity or identity or reality. So what they mean by Advaita is quite different from our Advaita Vada. From Vedanta standpoint, we can make a connection, but as they stand as two different traditions, they have to be distinguished. So Jnana Yoga, knowing Advaita, knowing that infinite reality as myself. Now, within the path of Advaita, there are the path of Jnana Yoga aimed at Advaita experience. There are two distinctions. One is the search for Brahman, and the other is the search for Atman. Now you may say, and correctly you may say, that well, Vedanta says that the Atman is Brahman, Tattvamasi, you are that. And yes, that's true. Vedanta, the conclusion of Vedanta is that the Atman and Brahman are the same. But we still use two words. We use the word Brahman and we use the word Atman. Why? Atman, when we're thinking subjectively, I am the Atman, and I am the infinite. And Brahman, all of this is Brahman. In the Chandogya Upanishad, there's a very famous statement, which some consider, not in the Advaita tradition technically, but some still consider this statement also a Mahavakya, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. That's not one of the four Mahavakyas, but some people consider it a fifth Mahavakya. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All of this is Brahman. You could also say Sarvam Kalvidam Atma. All of this is my own self. All of this is the self. But they're speaking about Brahman. All of this is Brahman. And so even in the path of Jnana Yoga and Jnana Yoga aiming at Advaita, one can concentrate on who am I the Atman. And that's the most common in Advaita. But also you find in Advaita the search for Brahman. You see it in the Upanishads, especially. And later also sometimes you see it, trying to understand what is all of this. So who am I and what is this? Again, as you know, all of you here must know that the conclusion is that this is the same as this. The Atman and Brahman are the same. I am Atma Brahma, one of the actual Mahavakyas. This self is Brahman. Soyam Atma Brahma. I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. But in the search for Brahman, let me give an example taken from the life of Swami Ashokananda, a great Swami of our order and a great Jnani, a man of great spiritual knowledge, one who was a great Advaitin, a great Jnana yogin, a great exponent of Swami Vivekananda, and a truly great soul, one of the great souls produced, one of the number of great souls produced by the order. He said that before he joined the order, he was living in what is now Bangladesh, at that time East Bengal, near Sylhet, in his village. And he used to make the practice of thinking according to Jnana Yoga, which was his path all of his life. Everything here is really Brahman, but I don't see it that way. Why not? Everything is Brahman plus name and form. You know, in Advaita, in the Advaitic texts, they say that everything here in the universe is Brahman plus name and form. That's all anything is. That's all anything is. You, I, the body, my watch, my pin, the picture behind me, the walls, the house, fire, water. Everything is nothing but Brahman plus name and form. Name meaning the ideas I have, and form meaning that which I perceive with the sense organs, all of the sense organs. But of course, the visual sense is predominant, but it means all sense information, and the name, that is the ideas I have about the thing, not just its name, but the ideas I have about it as well, which can be verbalized. Everything is nothing but Brahman plus that. Everything. So Swami Ashokananda made a practice. He said, if everything is nothing but Brahman plus name and form, why can't I see Brahman itself? Why can't I brush aside the name and form? And so he made a practice of that. When he saw a person, when he saw an object, he would make a practice of, okay, I see the form, and there's the name, the verbal information about it, including the name, like a chair or a man or a woman or a child. There's that. But the reality is there behind this name and form. Why can't I see it? So he made this practice of discriminating, trying. And again, that's what shows the difference between Jnana Yoga as philosophy and Jnana Yoga as real Jnana Yoga. He understood the philosophy, that was necessary. But the Jnana Yoga part was the effort to push beyond the concepts to see the reality. And so, okay, I see a man, I see a woman. That's the form, the name, but what is the reality behind that? Why can't I see it? So he practiced that for quite some time. And again, this was before he joined the order. And then he said one day he was in his home. The place where he was living at the time, doing some service work among poor people, doing a puja, which he did every morning. And he looked up from the puja to the door and saw a cat coming into the room. And as he looked at the cat, suddenly he saw the face of the cat melting into a divine light, an effulgence. And he realized that his practice was bearing fruit. You see, he was trying to realize Brahman, trying to see Brahman. So most often when we think of Jnana Yoga, it is, who am I? Who am I? Let me trace. I have this sense of consciousness, but I don't know what consciousness really is. Let me try to find consciousness itself. I have the sense of my own existence, but I don't know who I am. Who am I really? So it's seeking for the knowledge of the self. But it can also be, and the same person can practice both, it can also be seeking to know the reality, the objective reality, which is the most peculiar form of object. The most peculiar form of object. Because it's the divine object, which is the subject of the subject. That is, it's the soul of the soul. It's the reality of your own being. It's the reality of the subject, but you're seeking it as an object. And so it's where subject and object dissolve in Brahman. If I seek to know myself, I find that subject and object dissolve into a non-dual whole. If I seek Brahman, I find that Brahman and the Atman melt into an indivisible whole. But seeking Brahman means looking at my objective experience and trying to see it as Brahman. So that also is Jnana Yoga. So and Advaita. So Advaita means non-dualism, whether I seek it in the external or whether I seek it in the internal. And Jnana Yoga means seeking to know through that knowing faculty of the buddhi. Why the buddhi? Because there is where the light of the Atman is reflected. Again, the problem of language and the problem of concepts which are always clothed in language, expressed in language. So the problem of the mind and the problem of speech are really the same. The Upanishads say, avang manasagocharam, beyond mind and speech. The mind and speech cannot reach the reality. Really, mind and speech are practically the same thing because all concepts are verbal. The problem with words, I said, coming back to the point, I said that the truth is reflected in the buddhi. No, it's not exactly correct. From our present standpoint, that's a good way to think of it. A good way to think of it. There's the buddhi, and the light of the infinite self is reflected in it. From the standpoint of the infinite self, there's nothing else. So what is it going to be reflected in? It's only once I have the perception of a buddhi and the idea of the infinite consciousness that I can think that the infinite consciousness is reflected in the buddhi. So again, that's a concept, and it's a verbalization of something which is beyond concept and verbalization, but it's useful. And so using it usefully. The buddhi is where the light of the self resides within us, where that is what holds the light of the self. It's not the light of the self, it holds the light of the self. And so by using the buddhi, we're getting closer to the light of the self. So jnana yoga is what's also called buddhi yoga, as Sri Krishna himself calls it sometimes. He calls it Sankhya yoga, and he also calls it buddhi yoga, knowing the self through the buddhi. So again, jnana yoga means that, knowing the reality, whether it's to the level of Sankhya or to the level of Advaita, Vedanta. And Advaita means that there are no two. The reality, the experience of that reality, and the path leading to it, all of those are qualified by the term Advaita. Let me look at the time here. I do have some more time. It was 10:05 to 10:35. Oh, I've already gone into the question and answer part. So let me just say one thing and then see if there are any questions. As I said, the knowledge of Advaita is much clearer for people nowadays. Many thanks to the wonderful videos on YouTube of Swami Sarvapriyananda and a few other people, but he's the star of YouTube, and I don't say that to praise him, it's a recognition of a fact. But it often, I often found in my early days in Vedanta, which go back a long time, 55 years, that many people who had trouble with devotion, they didn't like the idea of deities, they didn't like the idea of meditating on a form of God and so forth. So they thought, well, I'm meant for the path of knowledge. Whereas actually, they were thinking of God in more abstract terms. They weren't really following the path of jnana, trying to know the reality in itself. So jnana yoga and Advaita refer to the process of knowing reality as it is. Not just, well, I don't really like, I have trouble with the idea of God, and I have trouble with the idea of deities and all of that. And so I just sort of think as God as the formless God that I pray to and that I worship and things, but I don't like the idea of all of these deities and so forth. Well, no, that's a form of bhakti yoga, what is called shanta bhava, the peaceful relationship to God. That I still think in terms of a reality that is personal, that I can pray to and so forth. But I just don't like deities. Well, no, that's still bhakti yoga. Jnana yoga means trying to know directly reality as it is, not as a personality, not through relationship and so forth. And let me add one last thing. I will, in the last session of this retreat, talk about the harmony of Advaita with the other paths, devotion and so forth. So.
Thank you, Swami. One question. Swami Vivekananda said we are physically immortal, even one with the universe, suggesting oneness or limitlessness even at the physical level. How can there be oneness at the physical level?
Yes. Now there, oneness is easier to speak about rather than Advaita, because as Swami Vivekananda said in that passage that the person is correctly referring to, Swamiji says, as long as there is one being that continues alive, I continue in that being. This body, representative of the body of any living thing, including not just people, but worms and insects and plants, fungi, etc. This body is just a whirlpool in the ocean of matter. I've identified with this body as my body, but it's not mine. I've identified it as mine because I'm attached to it. I've thought myself to be this body, but it's just a whirlpool in the ocean of matter. And so one practice is to think, and this was the basis of Swami Vivekananda's, or one element, I should say, of Swami Vivekananda's idea of service to all beings as God, is to think that the whole universe is my body. The whole universe is my body, because there's no separation between this body and other bodies. Why should I think that I end here? That's an extremely strange fact, that I think this is the end of me. That's just where my tactile sense ends, is at the skin. But I can see long distances. I can hear at long distances. Why don't I think that I am everything that I can see? I can hear. I am everything that I hear. I'm so attached only because of the tactile sense. But going further, why should I think that I am limited to what I can see and hear? Because the whole ocean of matter is one thing, and that is my body. So I have even physical immortality, means that as long as there is a universe, that is me. I am the life within the universe. I am the consciousness within the universe. The mind is just, my mind is a whirlpool in the ocean of mind. The ocean of mind is the cosmic mind, God's mind. And my mind, your mind, is just a whirlpool in that, and that's how we communicate. So I can identify with the cosmic mind, I can identify with the cosmic body, and then I'm immortal as the universe itself is immortal.
Swami, how can one manifest jnana yoga while undergoing Raja Yoga, using the faculties of the mind or the buddhi?
The two make a very powerful combination. It's quite easy, really. No yoga is easy, but it's quite easy to combine the two. Because in Raja Yoga, as I often say, Raja Yoga and Karma Yoga are agnostic, not in the usual sense. They're agnostic in the sense that they don't care how you perceive reality, whether you think of reality as personal or impersonal, God or the infinite. All they care about is how you practice. And so Raja Yoga, in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali makes it clear if you read between the lines, that is, if you read between the sutras, that much of it is directed towards an impersonal path, trying to develop the mind so that you can see the distinction between consciousness and everything else, prakriti. But he also says, or you can, or Ishvara Pranidhanad va, or Ishvara Pranidhanad, by the worship and surrender to God. So you can follow Raja Yoga as a path of bhakti, as the great Pauhari Baba did, that Swami Vivekananda knew and admired so highly. He was a Raja Yogi, but he was also a bhakta, a devotee. Or you can follow Raja Yoga as a path of, along with the path of knowledge. All you're doing is you are using the techniques of Raja Yoga to strengthen the mind and to learn to control your attention so that you can stay with the practice of Jnana Yoga. The problem in Jnana Yoga is I'm the self, I'm the self, I'm the self. And then in 2 minutes, I forget about it for the rest of the day. And then I come back to it at night when I read a book. So Raja Yoga strengthens the mind so that you can hold on to the thought.
Sarada Devi said that whatever is here and is in you. How can one reconcile to the bhakti path where there is duality between us and the Lord?
Yes, and that also is easy conceptually, difficult in experience, but everything in spiritual life is difficult to experience. It's just a matter of practice. Holy Mother's so-called last instruction, so-called because she spoke a few words after that. This was a few days before she passed away, but it was sort of her last instruction to the world, where she said, if you want peace of mind, my child, do not find fault with others. Find fault rather with yourself. Learn to see the world your own. No one is a stranger, my dear. The whole world is your own. Yes, that's pure Advaita. That's pure Advaita. And so that was Holy Mother giving Advaita Jnana, the knowledge of Advaita. But she did it in such a simple, homely way that comes right to the heart. There are many great saints, Christian saints, Sufi saints, Hindu saints, who combined the highest knowledge with the highest devotion, who realized that God, the Self, and Brahman are all one. Now, as paths, there are a difference in the paths, but in truth and in experience, they're the same. The great Christian saint I often refer to in this regard, Saint Angela di Foligno, an Italian saint of around the 12th or 13th century, medieval saint. She said she recorded her spiritual experiences at the demand of her spiritual director. She said, "In my deepest state of prayer, I went into a realm where there was no distinction whatsoever, no differentiation whatsoever. Even the Trinity was not there. Even Jesus and the Father and Holy Spirit were not there. And even I disappeared. And there was only the profound, silent, indivisible depths of God." That's interesting. She says, even I was not there. And yet she tells what was there. I was not there, but it was the experience of where there was no distinction whatsoever. Not even I was there. That means that it was a state of identity that she came back to tell. Now, the Bhakta explains that as I was lost in the profound depths of God. The Jnani explains it as I realized who I am and everything else disappeared and I alone existed throughout the universe. I was all. The Bhakta says God was all. So Swami Vivekananda says, let it all be I or all thou, but let there not be two. So the Bhakta says, you are all, you are everything. And the Jnani says, I am everything. They come to the same thing. And that's a part of what I'll explain in another session.
Swami, one last question. I see knowledge as complete, pervasive comprehension. Can you speak about acceptance when it comes to absorbing all dualities?
Repeat that one more time. I want to be sure I get the sense of the question.
I see knowledge as complete, pervasive comprehension. Can you speak about acceptance when it comes to absorbing all dualities?
Yes, acceptance comes in two ways, according to the path of knowledge and the path of devotion. And of course, there's subtle shades in between, but two basic ways. One way of acceptance is I am everything, and everything is just as long as I see the universe, everything is just a play of name and form within the ocean of myself. As the Ashtavakra Samhita says, Mai ananta mahambo dhav ascharyam jiva vichayaha udyanti ghananti khelanti pravishanti swabhavataha. I, the infinite ocean of consciousness, in me, the infinite ocean of consciousness, individual beings arise, fight for some time, play together, and then enter back into the ocean of consciousness. If I have that attitude, even as a practice, that's what I practice. If I see it, then the problem is over. But as a practice, try to see that everything is just a play within consciousness. Everything is just waves within consciousness, playing with each other. But that's all that they are, waves of consciousness. From the standpoint of devotion, I surrender everything to God. And so who am I to judge? Who am I to select? Who am I to choose? God is everything, and I have offered myself into the divine, made an oblation of myself into the divine. And so whatever happens, I accept that as the play of God. Not in a fatalistic way, I accept it and I just have to grin and bear it even though I'm miserable. No, I accept everything as the play of God, the divine play of God, the beautiful play of God, even suffering.
Thank you, Swami. We're now going